morning, everyone. My name is Cody Hall. I'm the host of The Faces, Entrepreneurs Are People Too, and the founding CEO of Telehelping, a virtual staffing organization. I'm very excited this morning to introduce two wonderful guests, Mahat and Neil, who are joining me here today. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Nice to meet you all.
Excited to have you. I definitely have to say, this is the first time that I'm actually having two people on the podcast at one time. So having more of a round table conversation is going to be fun.
We appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, we're fans of the pod, so we know this is the first time for two, but Mehak and I are co-founders, and so we thought it would provide a more holistic aspect to everything we've done on Legal Scale so far.
Well, great. Well, I'd like to know more about who we're talking to. I know the people viewing would like to know as well. Mahat, would you like to kick it off first? Tell us who you are. Tell us a little bit about you as a person and the professional side.
Yeah, absolutely. So for everybody listening, my name is Mahat Groshin. I'm, like Neil mentioned, the co-founder of Legal Scale. I myself, as I was growing up, always wanted to be a lawyer, and it's rare that anybody who wants to be a lawyer doesn't want to be in court. I always wanted to do corporate law. I was very excited to be able to pursue my dreams that way. I previously was at Davis Polk and Wardwell, which is a corporate law firm within the finance group in New York City. Was at Morgan Stanley for a bit as well on the credit committee desk, and then co-founded Legal Scale along with Neil. And ever since then, we've really hit the ground running and been able to create a fantastic financing corporate law boutique. Neil, I'll let you speak about yourself as well.
That's right. I mean, Mehak and I have been at it for going on 9 years at this point. It was initially just ourselves and a paralegal. We gradually added associates over time. Now we are 14 attorneys strong. We're adding more attorneys, and we're actually looking for 4 more. So if anyone is listening that isn't a corporate attorney, we'd love to hear from you. Overall, I think what the difference that we bring from a corporate law perspective is like we bring from a personal perspective. First and foremost, we look for the organic addition of clients to our platform, and just generally try to be solution driven and to have a solutions mindset for everyone that we're speaking to. Every entrepreneur, every business owner, every business executive has a set of problems that's either hampering their growth or is otherwise taking up their mind share, and we're here to assist with those items. And then I think broadly as well, Matt and I just try to be much more real people than sometimes corporate law can be. And so from our perspective, to get a holistic view of a client and to really understand how that team is working together and to get better integrated in that team has been informative for us.
Well, you're speaking to the right person, because if I were to look at my phone right now and I had to go to my, those little, if you have an iPhone, you have the ones that are the top of your text message. And so mine's my wife, my brother, my best friend, my trading partner, my Mexico-based attorney, my US-based attorney, and then my older brother. And so they should contact people in that order for all emergencies. I'm very vested in the value of legalities and legal representation, because especially in the international business space, there's lots of exposure. So I like to try to be as close to the letter of the law as possible. And sometimes I'll be honest with you, it's just knowing the law, right? Sometimes you just don't know. There's a whole world out there.
That's exactly right. And like you said, when you're dealing with multiple jurisdictions, it can be quite complicated. And the team that you described, from US to Mexican to Mexican counsel to wife, like all of those, and making sure that there's alignment amongst all of those groups is the best way to proceed.
Great. Well, being in the startup world, so fun fact, I used to want to be a lawyer. I will admit it. It's a fault, right? But I'll go ahead and get it out there. I did my LSAT, got accepted to law school. I was going to go to UCLA. It was going to be like a mid-20s career shift for me, away from entrepreneurship. And then my uncle, in his wisdom, he's like, Cody, don't become a lawyer. Just hire a lawyer, right? And I was like, I agree. And so then I continue my entrepreneur path, but I've always had a respect for a letter to the law. But if I'm being completely honest with you, and I want to get your perspective more on things like this, because I think it's hilarious. I found one of my attorneys because I saw a billboard that says, just because you did it doesn't mean you're guilty. And, and I was like, that's my kind of lawyer.
First and foremost, I do think, one, we love your uncle because he encourages job security for us. So that's always a strong plug. Second, I think what we're, in the corporate world in which we operate, what we try to do first and foremost is, thankfully, there's not even guilty versus innocent in our world, right? People are just aligned in order to get a deal done. And of course, they want to get it done on their terms and in a way that provides visibility so that they know exactly the deals they've struck. And that's what we do every day in, day out. And we do it in multiple groups, whether it's for funds, there's LPs and there's the investment manager, the general partner. For Mehak's world of there's borrowers and lenders. It runs the gamut. And so what we try to do first and foremost is figure out where there's alignment of interest, and then figure out where there's items that we have to log roll or compromise on. And that's what we do time and time again. And so for our world, there's just there's already good alignment by virtue of term sheet getting signed or whatever else. And then we're here to just further flesh out that agreement and make sure that everybody is guilty of a good deal.
Yeah, and then I think one additional thing I'd add as well is it's once you get a deal done, that's not where it ends, right? Whereas, for example, in court, you have a settlement or you have a judgment and that's it. Everyone walks away from it. Here, especially, for example, in the debt world or the equity financing world, it's an ongoing relationship. I always call these living documents because you're going to still be with this facility or this investor for at least 3, 4, 5, if not longer years, and you need to maintain that relationship. So if you just throw over the table and blow up the entire deal at the end, it's not going to be a good outcome for anybody. That's why I really enjoy this practice, because it is, as competitive as it might be, it's also very collaborative.
And I want to make a note. I have a friend who's a corporate lawyer that I think he recently left his firm, and so I will make a recommendation to him. If you're looking for lawyers, I know he's barred in like 13 states, so I'll put him that way. So for those who are listening, because I have a mixed group of entrepreneurs, right? And many of entrepreneurs can range from, I'm just starting this, guy I spoke to yesterday just quit his job and was starting his own company, right? And then I also speak to people who've been in the game for 25 years. So for those listening, what is corporate law? What is that?
Yeah, so corporate law is really the practice of putting together on paper the agreements that two business principals have, right? So it's two business principals, they come together and they decide, hey, I believe in your company, I'm going to put money in, whether that's through an equity investment, or that's through a debt financing facility, or even purchasing their business itself for the equity value or the actual residual value of the business. Either way, it's like I believe in your company. Let's try to figure out ways that it's beneficial to me and beneficial to you. So what we do is we take that and we paper it. So our practice involves putting together these contracts that, again, two or more, a lot of times there's larger transactions with a number of parties involved, but all parties agree that there's value to be created and value to enhance. So what we do is put that on paper, make sure that our clients are protected as much as possible, while also giving the company or the business the ability to grow and continue to grow in the way that it wants to grow. I know that's a very high level view of corporate law, but hopefully that helps put things into perspective.
I think it's a great foundation for my follow-up comment, because I want everyone to understand that we live in a world of AI, and I hear it every day. One of my good friends is a lawyer. Well, wow. Everyone always wants to take the ChatGPT to do their documents, right? Write this for me, construct this for me, make it this. I myself have been on the bad side of an investment agreement dispute, right, with a billionaire, right? Very scary word in the legal world. And we essentially had a startup that was well funded, and we had started a sub company to service the startup. And he took that as us, siphoning value from the company into another entity in which he had no control or investment into. And it was scary, because it's never in my world that I think I'd be on the other side of a billionaire telling me, I'm going to sue you so many times that you're going to run out of money trying to respond to my lawsuits. And if it wasn't for the fact that we had an amazing firm that drafted all of our documents, they stepped in, they navigated the relationship with us, and we had something to fall back on, that for that relationship to be guided through that turmoil. And it ended positively. I didn't get sued 30,000 times over. But, we ended up, ending the relationship because of the well-established agreement and how it said to deal with things in the event that there was disagreement.
In fact, you remind me of exactly something that happened about a year ago where 3 years prior to that, I had drafted a credit agreement for one of my clients. We had negotiated pretty heavily, and the company ended up having to go through some bankruptcy procedures and things like that. But I remember that the founder came to me and said, Mehak, the way that you drafted this document was so airtight that you saved me from what could have been. And I think about that every day, and I think about that every single time I review any document. It's like, I want the founder, if there's any issue or whoever I'm representing, my client, to always feel like we're being able to protect their interests to the full extent.
That's exactly right. I mean, and one piece of advice, turning back to your original question, Cody, as well, is, I think that because Mehak and I have now been doing this for a long time, maybe longer than we care to admit, it's helpful because we all have vintages of agreements that went through COVID and went through bankruptcy and went through business divorce, where two founders that were initially friends, went into part ways. And I think that's really helpful. When we're creating these agreements, it's easy to draft for the sunny day. It's much harder to draft for the billionaire telling you that a very standard practice and breathing down your neck is going to result in litigation. And so the key thing for us is to consider that downside scenario. Like Lloyd Blankfeld said, and just to paraphrase him, he spends 98% of his time thinking about 2% risks. That's what Mehak does every day. And that's what I do every day. And so I think that typifies a great attorney is to draft things not just for sunshine, but for rain.
No, I mean, so valuable. And I'd like you to, I myself have seen the value because I've been, telehelping at one time in 2024. I will admit it, we averaged about one lawsuit a month. And because Mexico is a very litigious country. And in Mexico, like we're the United States, simply filing the suit or threatening to sue means you're already in it, right? It just, the accusation itself means you have to deal with it. And we would deal with one once because we have hundreds of virtual staff, and you can't possibly always have good relationships. It's impossible. And so, I think that it'd be valuable for those out there starting companies, running companies that do listen, because we have a great base of entrepreneurs. Explain the value of just good legal agreements, right? Don't put your trust in templates you get offline.
I think that's exactly right. Like don't put your trust in templates you get offline. Matt and I integrate AI into our process. It's a little bit more cloistered and a little bit more bespoke than ChatGPT. But I mean, we recognize the value of AI tools and good templates. But at the end of the day, a key component of this is relationships and understanding the context that our client is in. And I think that's one thing that both Matt and I do an excellent job of, is because of our business background and because we've been doing this for a long time, we can know, okay, this is a trouble spot. Or for your business specifically, being based in Mexico and having so many different relationships at different times and with litigation in the past, here's what we have to have buttoned up within your next financing documentation. Or if you get acquired, the application of an indemnity could be a very big deal. And so for us, we're going to navigate around those other items that for ChatGPT can certainly be applied to.
No, when I started telehelping, I went about it as a lot of entrepreneurs do, right? We first do, and then we worry later, right? And I was a certain amount of time into it. I'm not going to go on the record since this is a recorded call on how long we were into the game before I brought on legal counsel. We got big enough where in Mexico we started having problems, and so we had to start bringing on counsel, and then we eventually had to get better counsel, and we had to elevate ourselves to a firm level. And one of the things we found out is we try to treat Mexico like the United States, and in both civil and criminal. In Mexico, I learned that a lot of things that we see as criminal is see as civil here in the United States is actually criminal in Mexico. Something like solicitations of clients from your employer, like they see that in Mexico as theft of actual money. Right, they see it the same way, and it's the same way with some states in the United States. Just because you're expanding to new territories and to different states, the laws aren't the same. Say if you're in California, like I am today.
That's absolutely right. What I've noticed and has been an unfortunate case is when people hire lawyers a little too late in the process. And so they've already created the foundation of their business, which sometimes works out great. And a lot of times when it comes to us, we often have to undo what has already been done in order to redo everything correctly. And that just is a lot of time, expense, and headache, frankly. And so to your point, Cody, about getting lawyers at the right time, it is really important, especially when you start to get outside money into your business, or we call it like OPM or other people's money. You really have to become a fiduciary of those folks that are really believing in you and investing in you. And the best way to do that is to make sure that you have good legal counsel that can put together the appropriate documentation for you.
I completely agree. And so, for example, my board at telehelping, one of the representatives from the legal firm that we have retained in the US sits on my board. And so, because I want my legal that close to the fire, right? And, I compare, I usually always say this, like guns are like tourniquets. When you need one, it's too late to get one. I say the same thing about lawyers, right? If you need a lawyer, don't have one, and you're looking for one, you're already behind the ball. And so I appreciate that perspective. And I want to kind of jump across the fence here, because I'm sure that both of you are far more complex than just lawyers. And so when you're not, legal scale, you're not growing this firm that you've been with for 9 years as founders, what does life look like outside? Because the world of lawyers is that you don't leave the office.
That's right. We've never seen the sun. Matt and I both went to Cornell Law School, and we were, like I mentioned before, JD MBAs. I think that both Matt and I are really interested in entrepreneurship, and our parents are entrepreneurs. And so I think what's guided us the whole time is really trying to build a community at legal scale. We talked a lot about the client side of the business, but one thing that's been really interesting to us is just building a platform that other attorneys want to be a part of, and just that people want to attach themselves to. And so it's been really fun for us to build a community at legal scale. I kind of compare it to David Geffen at Asylum Records, that built a great platform for singer-songwriters where they could do their work, but without the crazy imposition of, in that case, a record label, in our case, a large law firm bearing down. We want to give people more autonomy, more control, and allow them to be generally, it's funny to say this in the law firm practice, but more creative in terms of problem solving. And so that's what really drives us, is sort of like this idea of the creation of community. And we had a great community at Cornell Law School. We had a good community at Davis Polk, and we have a great community here at Legal Scale. And so that's been fun for us.
Yeah, I mean, and to add to that, even from the folks that we knew at Cornell when, we're young, mid-20s, hanging out, having fun, but still learning a profession, those bonds last forever. So even now that our cohort has really gone into, now they're partners at law firms, they've also started their own firms, they're business executives, whatever else. It's really cool to see. So we do all get together quite often to just catch up and see everybody's little toddlers running around, or their partners, or whatever. So that's definitely another fun thing that we do that's outside of work, is just see our old friends.
No, and that's so one of my dear friends that I grew up with, we would be prime examples of kids who probably should not have made it out of our situations. And now he sits as the assistant district attorney in Florida, right? And so great, would have never expected this guy to be where he's at, and from what I say, from trailer park to Georgetown to working for the one of the big fours, and it's great to see that. I also see that he struggles to find that balance, because in his world, crime doesn't wait, right? It's not asking for his schedule. He's a litigator, and so he's going to the fight. How do you balance that? Because not only are you lawyers, which is, if you were just associates, if you were just partners, you would be busy, right? You are those, plus the fact that you're founding members, right? And so how do you find that balance? Because I know lawyers they're like bloodhounds, like they're about their craft, and sometimes they're not looking around them. How do you find that balance?
Yeah, I think, part of it is probably just ingrained in me from early on. I was born in Pakistan. My family came over when I was 8 years old. I'm the only lawyer in my entire family, and I've always been that kind of person that won't go to bed until I have inbox zero, which gets harder and harder when you're getting 1,000 emails a day. So, it definitely is difficult to balance things, but I think part of what we do really well at Legal Scale, and not just the two of us, but our entire team, is separate the work from the BS. So we really don't create work out of the sake of creating work. Or if a client comes to me and says, hey, I want a Cadillac, and I'm like, you know what, you're gonna be fine with a Toyota Camry. There's no reason for you to spend all that money. Like, I'm talking myself out of work, but that's because I'm doing the best by the client. And that's also a way that we can manage the work process while making sure that we give the client exactly what they need. So while there definitely is a work-life balance that needs to be maintained, part of it too, and I'm not gonna lie to you, is my clients are also my friends. So, they've become my friends over the years. And so it's nice to be able to go to a client's offices, meet everybody there, and spend some time. So that's a social aspect built into the business aspect as well.
That's perfect. No, I totally agree. I mean, I think that for us, the creation of community and genuine relationships, and especially on the client side, has been really great. I mean, after I don't know that we had a holiday break per se. We remained super busy and actually did some pretty interesting transactions for Jesse Tinsley and others. We actually helped Jesse with a TikTok acquisition lately, which has been interesting and reported in the news. But so when some of the, which has been awesome. But so when some of our other clients came back and after like a bit of a holiday break, I was genuinely interested in seeing, picking up the phone and catching up with them to see how their holiday was and what's front of mind for them as they head into the 2025. So I think Mehak's exactly right. The creation of balance so that we're enjoying every day and don't need the reprieve, I think is really helpful because it helps us stay up the extra hour.
No, I mean, I just spoke to a guy and we did a short that we posted yesterday, and it said balance, is it a myth? And I think it is sometimes. The first COO of my company was my wife, right? And she was immigrated from Mexico, just a fierce executor. And building a company in Mexico, I'm from the Southeast. Like, I can't possibly understand. I understand how to run a business at that point, but I wouldn't understand culture, people, how to drive them, what motivates them. And so she stepped in to be that person for me. And so, we've now created this relationship where she's part therapist for me, so I can get out of my own way. But also she keeps me true to my arrow because now she's not our head of operations anymore, right? Because we got a family that someone needs to help run. And I got to say, I really don't want that job. I don't have the patience for it, but she does. She manages all 3 kids, me, my 2 boys, and me. And so it's great having that perspective of the desire for balance, but also when you run companies, you own companies, you have to understand it's our fabric. It's who we are, right? Yeah. It's I mean, you think about up until the time you go to bed, and maybe even you dream about it if you're like me.
And something a former colleague of mine said previously to me, and this was a woman, she had been in the practice for more than 20 years, had been partner for more than 15 years. And she said, don't put pressure on yourself to do 100% of everything 100% of the time. Some days you're going to do 50% of one thing and 100% of the other, whether that's, work or family or social. And the next day you might flip that balance entirely and cut yourself some slack. That's really what it comes down to, is make sure that you have the balance that you need while also making sure that you're getting done what you need to get done. And that has always helped me, because if you put too much pressure on yourself to spend all of your time with your kid that day and get all of your client calls done and get all of your work done, you're going to burn out very quickly.
No, I agree. And, to quote one of my mentors in the that I met at my time at Purdue was a guy who now runs their MBA program. And he said, sometimes perfection can get in the way of good enough. Right. And, and I am a perfectionist. Right? Just like, I want things done exactly the way I expect them to be done. And, you know, that goes into the legality of things, right? You know, one of the things I will quote frequently with talking to clients who, like you said, like they're my friends. I have so many people, I speak to them so frequently. I've worked with them so long, you know, checking in on them is like following up with a friend sometimes, because we've had such a long relationship. But I always go back to, I'm like, I say, read the agreement, right? Just read the agreement. And I encourage people to read the agreement. I will follow the agreement to the letter that it's been signed, because that's our highway rules. And so it's something I always look forward to. Like, I never make up my own things, and I try to live up to that every day. And if I check all those boxes, then I can worry about something else, right? And
Right.
so that's my even kill line. Like, what did I agree to?
I think that's perfect. And for us too, like we try to live by exactly the commercial agreement that our clients have in their heads. You know, we don't try to strike a crazy deal, anything imbalanced. In the same way we follow the agreement. In order to draft the agreement, we follow the term sheet. We follow the conversations that we've had, that we've heard from clients time and time again. And to Mehak's point from earlier, we try to think about, you know, what will make people better in this partnership when it's, you know, a 4 or 5 year loan, or if they're on your cap table for 5 or 7 or 10 or 15 years. What's going to deepen those relationships, and like I say in getting TS with Bill Uri, you know, it's all of those are opportunities to deepen the relationship, and all this negotiation, all, you know, every agreement that we follow, everything that we do is there to make sure that there's less fractious and bad outcomes later.
No, I love it. And, you know, one thing that's been sitting in the back of my mind that I think would be valuable, and something I've recently gone through, is that we did a raise last year for telehelping for expansion. Easy raise. And we had a recent investor who wasn't able to complete one of their tranches, right, of their payments. And so we had to, you know, dilute their investment. And as to our terms of our agreement, now they don't get all of it because they had a certain period, then they had a wait period to get it done. And so that was an interesting conversation. My wife's like, "What do you know? Does that stress you because you know that person?" Well, no, it doesn't stress me because it's the agreement, right? You know, I can't hunt them down for money they don't have, but I also can't give them equity they haven't purchased. And so, you know, there's that mix there. And, you know, if you would be so kind, for those out there who are starting businesses and, you know, want to take money from friends and family, want to take money from institutions, you know, talk about how taking other people's money, it can be good, it can be bad.
Right. I mean, so maybe I'll take it first, and I think it, you know, there are probably different things to keep in mind for equity versus debt. So my world is principally that of equity, and Mehak's world is debt. I mean, I think the things that are generally true for our businesses are that, first and foremost, making sure that people have clear expectations for what you're doing, especially for that, you know, some, you know, friends and family round, or sometimes called a triple F round for friends, family, and fools. However you choose it. I think that what we generally try to do first and foremost is make sure that we're adding capital. We're doing so in a way that we're not overcooking an agreement either. So one of the best innovations that Mehak and I have seen in the course of our career is, you know, simple agreements for future equity, and simple agreements are for safes, as they're often called, are easy ways to bring capital into a business in early stage financing rounds with a 5-page document. The safe was really popularized by Y Combinator beginning 2014, 2015 was the first time we saw those vintages. Before that, there were convertible notes, which were similar, but a little bit more complicated than they needed to be. So if you can't afford legal counsel, or you can just get, you know, first off, always feel free to talk to Mehak and I for 20 minutes, and we mean that sincerely. In the show notes, we're happy to provide our contact information so that people can follow up. But we think about an easy way to bring people together to finance a business. And I would think about Eric Ries and what he said in the Lean Startup. When these businesses first start up, or when these companies first start, I should say, they're really not even businesses yet, right? They're committees to see if a viable business can exist. And so when you're first writing a check into a business, absolutely don't write in more than you feel like you can lose. Because the truth of the matter is, they're yet to find really any sort of business model. They're yet to make even, you know, the contribution margins on a single deal work. And so it's really important that people just have that scope for that first deal, and people are okay losing their time and or their money till they figure out that viable pathway. And we've seen incredibly smart entrepreneurs that have been at businesses and succeeded in businesses, and even been their own venture capitalists for a long time, that haven't made that first or second or third venture work. And so I would say, in the first way, just scoping is just don't think of it as a business yet. That first check you write in is to figure out and to help and to help really shape something. And then after, we really figure out the initial economics, that's when we can add some rocket fuel into the business. That Series C round, that Series A round, those price rounds are when we have, and we're beginning to have a non-pivotal, much more tried and true business model. And I would say after those rounds, you should really consider debt. And so I have to now turn it over to you to, that's often when, this is how we pass the baton, is that I do the easy actions, and I pass it over to Mehak for the harder debt stuff.
That's exactly right. So at that point, your business would be ready to incur some debt. And the great thing about debt, unlike equity, is that you can really get a multiple of what your value is, right? So let's say that you raise on safes and whatnot, let's just say you raise $1 million in equity. Usually it depends on the debt finance product, but you can get something like a $5 million debt line, and that will greatly allow you to expand your business. Now, when you get there, debt is more difficult than equity because it's usually provided by a third-party lender that might not have the same FFF situation that you had previously, and they might and should impose covenants on you and restrictions on what you can and cannot do in the business. And this is where structuring becomes really important. So having that proper structure set up from the beginning can lend itself to make it very easy for you to incur debt, even if a lender has a complicated structure set up for how they want to see your subsidiaries or your top corporation incorporated. Now, even if that's not set up, we can always change that and make it happen. But at that point, you really need to start thinking about ways that when you do incur this debt, how can I go wrong, right? Because if we end up in a default scenario under the debt facility, that's a much bigger deal because it cascades throughout the entire business. So that's where not only, when you're raising a priced equity round, is it important to have lawyers, but especially also on the debt side, it's really important to have lawyers, because I'll quite often see companies that come to us at some stage in early stages and they signed an agreement for, let's say, a very small, like even Amazon debt facility that you can get, and they've basically signed away their life rights, and at the very end it'll be like, hey, this can be under penalty of death, and they'll be like, yeah, sure, I'll sign it. So not that that's actually happened, but you never know.
Feels like it.
Yeah, right.
Exactly.
And you just won't know because you haven't read it. So it really does become important to have folks that are well versed in this kind of legalese in order to help you understand exactly what you're getting into.
Yeah, I think it speaks to is the different levels that entrepreneurs are at as well. I have signed away my life before a couple times, right? Scary feeling, right? Taking all that responsibility of money on, and because I day trade. Day trading right now while I'm talking to you, right? It's happening in the background. And, oftentimes I see people who get into the trading world is they always look at the upside, right? They're like, oh my goodness, I make this trade. It's $50,000. I could win. It'll be great. But what they're not paying attention to is their risk exposure oftentimes is, and I'm a negative Nancy. I live in the risk exposure. I'm always thinking like, I want sunshine and rainbows, but what am I on the hook for? Right. And I think in the beginning of my career, I was okay with being on the hook for everything. There was what seemed like sometimes to be unlimited exposure to, any backfall that would come from these, debts or these equity deals. But, now I'm further down the line and I don't want to expose all my assets to such danger. And so, I'm very well structured in the sense that, Cody himself is, I'm a hard target, right? I worry about like, if I have a company, are they going to pierce that LLC, right? How is it being operated? How is that deal structured? Am I personally exposed? If I do get exposed, how much am I exposed, right? And so now I'm much further down the line. I think it just depends on where you're at in the journey, what risk you're willing to accept.
And that's a really astute point, Cody, is that quite often, especially when the company is early stages, there might be personal guarantees involved. And that is usually given by the founders of the companies, or there might be like key person covenants that if one executive leaves, then all of a sudden your entire debt facility is in default. So those are really important things to consider, because you're not only putting your own self on the line, but your business as well.
Correct. I've had in the past a debt deal that was predicated on a board member being a board member, right? And when the idea came up that he was going to leave, it was like with him came now this debt defaulting, and so we had to really fight to keep him in the game and interested in our company, because if he left, now we're instantly on the hook for this. And so now it's like, okay, by the way, we want our money back.
Right. Exactly. So those are really important considerations to always keep in mind.
Well, the one thing I want to pivot off to as we gear down the hill is, where did Legal Skill come from? Were you two just in law class one day and not wanting to listen, and it was like, what we should do when we get out of here? If we survive Cornell, we will just start our own firm. Right? Where did the idea come from?
Well, so Mehak and I, both of our parents are entrepreneurs. My parents are attorneys in near Scranton, Pennsylvania. And so because of our entrepreneurial will, while we were at law school, we were the type of people that would have new business ventures or be interested in starting something new. But for us, especially once we were at Davis Polk, it really appeared as though big law was like the ultimate disruptible industry. And we say that, having succeeded and enjoyed being at Davis Polk, we knew on one side that rates were increasing and clients increasingly felt fleeced by these law firms, by these businesses. And I remember 8 years ago, it was in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, what one of the partners that I was working with is charging. And then last year it was also in the front page of the Wall Street Journal, and his hourly rate had increased by almost $1,000 per hour. Increased by, not even was. So that was traumatic, but that's 6 or 7% growth per annum across a decade. And so in addition to clients feeling fleeced, however, it became clear that law firms were missing the mark for increasing types of like pretty novel transactions or novel industries. So we talked about AI before. Mehak and I have several AI businesses on the platform, all of which have very different financing needs, of course, different labor needs, and different concerns around IP and copyright than any of the businesses that we've really, that we had been working with for the past decade. As we also are aware of, on the flip side, we're aware that a lot of the lawyers that we're working with really, so that this are not enjoying it either, right? And so Mehak and I were working with people at Davis Polk, and we're working with people now that were at odds with their firm and found it hierarchical, didn't have the autonomy over their own careers. And so it was clear that clients felt fleeced. A huge component of the associate, counsel, even junior partners at firms also didn't like it or were unhappy. And so that's really that to take care of both of those items is the nexus for Legal Scale. And so our thought process fundamentally was to go into this very disruptive industry and make it better so that clients have, of course, they're paying our rates, but are providing more visibility around billing. We're probably better visibility around when we will collect on different matters. And then on the flip side, giving our attorneys and associates working on our platform much better autonomy over their careers, and we're treating everybody like counsel from day one.
That's great. So you saw an opportunity in an existing industry, which you say you were definitely happy in, and you just saw the need, and that's great. I think oftentimes people think that entrepreneurship spurs from just some sort of distaste, like, oh, I just have to do it better, it's horrible. But here you spoke like it was working, you just felt like there's a better way to do it.
That's right.
Yeah, and I spoke with one of the attorneys that had been at a big law firm for 7 or 8 years, and I was like, well, how did you survive here for that long? And this was when I was more of a mid-level, and he said back to me, well, I just kind of kept my head down, and I looked up one day and I was in 8th year. I was like, that's not how I want to take control of my career. I want to be active in my career rather than just let it wash over me. And those are the same kind of people. Yeah, right. And that's a 100% true story. And so that's the kind of people that we want to work with as well, which are the people that take their career into their own hands, want to be in control of it, want to face with clients and do the right work by them and build something amazing.
No, I mean, that's Very similar, like telehelping. I had about 35 nurses out of the Philippines for my previous healthcare company, and it was working. All hands, like it functioned and it worked well enough. And I was just sitting there like, well, there's has to be a better way to do this. I'm paying a premium for people in the Philippines to speak Spanish, which just seemed asinine to me. Right. And I was like, why are we not doing this with someone who's not 16 time zones away? And that's kind of where telehelping came from. I also realized that most of my virtual staff was working multiple companies at the same time. And I felt like as a client, I was being taken advantage of because I thought I was paying for someone's full time, and when they weren't working with me, I thought they were resting so that they could work with me tomorrow, versus like just rolling from company to company. And that's where, we came in, we're like, I think we can provide relatively low cost staffing while not exploiting people. And that was our entire approach. And so we're not the cheapest, we're not the most expensive, and which is why we find ourselves in industries like legal, accounting, and CFAs, where kind of being accurate is very important. And so being right, it matters.
Yeah, of course. No, we entirely agree there. From our perspective, and just like you said too, there are other low cost law firms out there. There's LegalZoom, for which you can get documentation for a song. For us, though, the goal really is to better scope our items and then to provide value add for clients from in each and every engagement. And so that's our goal each time. And I think that just like you said, to have that alignment, to figure out where there's friction in the process, and then to eliminate that is what we do time and time again. And it's really it's made our associates much more productive. It's made each day of ours better, and especially when you might be working 12 or 13 hours a day, and it's part of who you are. To make every day better is really the goal, and helps achieve that balance that we talked about before.
Wonderful. Well, as I said to Neil in the beginning, I really, at the end of my conversations, I like to get that piece of advice from folks, because, you've had incredible journeys, you've experienced different challenges, and you've seen people experience challenges. And so it puts you in a unique position to provide a nugget of knowledge to someone who may be either wanting to be a lawyer or wanting to be an entrepreneur to raise money. And so, Mac, Neil, like if you want to go, I'd love to hear a piece of advice that you would share to one of those parties of people, or maybe something that's universally applicable.
Yeah, sure. I think we're in a unique position because we're not only lawyers but entrepreneurs, and I think that Venn diagram is the smallest little sliver in the middle that might exist, because
Just us.
because lawyers tend to be more risk averse. But
Yes.
yes, and that's part of the job, right? But I think what is really important when you are running your own firm, whether it's a law firm or any other business, is put out the fire that's in front of you, and let's then worry about a plan for the next few fires. Because there's always going to be something to worry about. There's always going to be something to deal with. But at the same time, it's about planning ahead and also making sure you're taking care of the day-to-day. And part of it is really just to get a great team around you. Get the people that you trust the most, that work closely with you, and partners, whether it's your co-founder here or, just people in your own C-suite that you really do trust. And always make sure you're not the smartest person in the room. I know we always say this, but we always let the smart people tell us what to do. And that's our key to, knock on wood, success so far, is to hear from other folks that have been in the room before, have had these same experiences, and take from their advice and build on it ourselves.
I think that's perfect. Yeah, I would, in the same vein, I would say that Mehak and I have just done a great job, and Mehak is doing especially a great job building a network from the time that we were in college to the time that we were at Cornell Law School, to Davis Polk, and now we really take virtually every meeting. We try to meet with people. We try to understand exactly what they're doing, what they're working on. And the best part of life is to see not just what the value that you can bring to someone in the first 2 days or 2 months of meeting them, but 2 decades in. It's been excellent now to, Cornell is more than a decade in the rearview mirror, and now to see people having started their own firms, and we can assist them with the launch of their own practices. Or Zelmer Myrie, who was he was the president of our law school class. He's now, I think, I genuinely think he will be the mayor of New York. So and Mahat and I are both on this finance committee. We've been uniquely blessed by this maintenance of these very, very positive relationships. And, it's been excellent to see what's done across a decade. I can't wait with a 3 or 4 decade time horizon to see the density of Brazil, these great people there.
Well, no, Neil, Mac, I think you are on a very sharp upward trajectory. And I think that what you're doing is something very noble and near and dear to my heart as someone who balances risk and liability every day. And then I also, much like entrepreneurs do, I have my legal team there to tell me what I should be worried about. And then I walk out into the minefield. And so, I think that you're doing great things for entrepreneurs. And for all those who are listening, definitely feel free to reach out to Legal Scale. I know a lot of you are out there starting your business, or maybe you're far into your business and you're sitting here thinking that you've never even given legal a second thought process because you've never had any legal trouble, right? Like we said in the beginning, not the time to think about it when you're already underwater. And so, I would like to thank both of you for joining me for this podcast this morning. And I know that you've taken time out of your busy day leading your firm. And so, again, I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us. It's a great experience, great pod.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cody, and to all the listeners as well.
Thank you. Well, folks, if you have any issue getting in contact with Legal Scale, or if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to my team at info@telehelping.com. They feel free at all times to connect them with our guests. And once again, thank you all for listening and have a nice day.
This video was brought to you by our official sponsor, Telehelping. Need support for your business? Telehelping connects you with top-tier remote staff to help you streamline operations and fuel growth. Go to telehelping.com and get started today.